What's up, everyone? Welcome back. This is Strange Planet. And before we even get involved in today's episode, I wanted to give a rest in peace to two legendary icons that passed this past week. One is the Queen of Rock and Roll, which is Tina Turner. I believe she was 83. She is a musical icon with numerous hits, and her music will live on forever. And unfortunately, we also lost legendary actor Ray Stevenson, who's been in various shows and movies. He was the Punisher, I believe, in the late 2000s. It was called Punisher Warzone. He was also a supporting character in some of the Thor movies. And he was also in Rome and also in Black Sails, just to name a few. Our condolences go out to their families, and their art will live on forever. But now, as we always do on Strange Planet Podcast here, we like to give you the news, but with some comedy attached to it as well. In recent news, we have Ron DeSantis, who just announced his presidential run, which is causing a meltdown for Trump, that's for sure. How do you guys feel about that?
I'm more interested in where it's going to go with the Republican Party, who they're going to fall behind, and will that be their downfall if they're too busy squabbling with each other and the Democrats kick them from behind? But we'll see. I mean, you never know with politics in this country.
That's very true. How do you feel about this, Rook?
So I was going to say, I remember Ray Stevenson playing Titus Pulo in the Rome TV series on HBO. He kind of played like like he was one of the two main characters, and he was like sort of like the comedy guy as opposed to like the more serious other main character. So that show was like one of the first, it came out like around the time, like before all the huge HBO shows came out. It was like one of the first shows along with The Sopranos that like, really made television, that kind of the new Hollywood, the new movies. And, so, his character was like a big part of that. So, rest in peace to that guy.
Oh, of course. Yeah, that's a big loss. It really is. Talented guy, too. I actually never even seen that show, to be honest, either, but I heard very good things about it.
Oh, yeah. It's an amazing show. Just surprised that, he's pretty young.
Yeah, that's the thing. He was only 58, I want to say. I think it was. And that's, that's sad. That sucks. When great people like that go, it's never anything anybody ever wants to see either. You know what I mean? Because that's like a milestone now. You know what I mean? It sucks. Especially even for Tina Turner, the Queen of Rock and Roll there, too. Like, she was a legendary artist. Now, I'm sure not everybody's a fan. I'm not a diehard fan, but I still don't deny her talent. You know what I mean? Christ, I mean, she's gotten God knows how many different hits, and she's done music for shows and movies, and GoldenEye, I believe she even did the intro credit song for back in the, mid-90s or whatnot. But how do you feel about this DeSantis situation?
Well, I mean, we all saw it coming. He's been hinting that he was running for president for the last maybe couple of years. And yeah, I mean, even before this latest sort of competition with Trump, they were pretty much going at each other, trading barbs, and they're very similar candidates. Although I will say that DeSantis is very dangerous for a different reason than Trump. He is actually a sort of a smarter version of him.
I was just going to say that. Yeah, he's the more dangerous side because he actually knows what he's doing when he does it, whereas Trump doesn't know what the fuck he's ever doing. I'm just saying, my perspective on the whole thing is I find it kind of hilarious, really, because one, that's not really a big surprise to most of us that this is happening. You know what I mean? This is kind of almost expected in a sense. But I just find it funny how he's going to run for president and he's still at war with Mickey Mouse. So, like, you know what I mean? Like, this guy's has so much problems with Disney for whatever reason, and that's not going to help his cause, that's for sure. You know what I mean? If anything, it's going to make this more hilarious as we go. So, you know what I mean? There's that too, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, he is definitely someone who he likes to play to the crowd of the Republicans, and he's a social justice warrior for the right, meaning, he is trying to roll back the civil rights movement, the women's rights movement, like anything that this country has progressed upon in the past, 50 or even 100 years, he wants to go back on it. Now, the difference between him and Trump is I don't think Trump really ideologically cares about those things, but he apparently does. And Trump doesn't really have the smarts to really govern effectively. And by what I mean by effectively is, he didn't know how to run government. DeSantis does. DeSantis is actually a governor, and DeSantis is actually smart. Little known fact, he is a Harvard educated lawyer.
Is that right?
Yes.
You wouldn't know
it. You wouldn't know it. How he carries himself and how he expresses himself, but he knows exactly what he's doing, and that's the scary part. He pretends like he doesn't,
and that's the
he
danger
pretends
with
to
him.
be he pretends to be a dumb everyman, but he's not. He knows exactly what he's doing.
I just can't help but think too, though, like, because you figure a lot of time has passed, and you got the election coming up in another year or so, and it's like that's the best they got. You know what I mean? Like that's the best. Really, it like you said, it seems like just a different version of Trump. Really, is really all we're dealing with again, and round we go. You know what I mean?
Well, it's a more dangerous version of Trump, and one that I think is going to be very appealing to a large segment of Republicans, whether he appeals more than, say, Trump through Trump's force of personality. I don't know, because Trump convinced a lot of people last time, or, the first time he ran for president, that all of the people that were running against him, who were professional politicians, he convinced the voters that those politicians were full of shit and that they should put their faith in him. And DeSantis may have governing experience. He may have, his Harvard law degree, and he may have conservative credentials. But what he sort of doesn't have is sort of Trump's track record of convincing a national audience to support him. And that's going to be the challenge for DeSantis. It's, will he provide an alternative to Trump that is more appealing than Trump himself? He obviously has the same sort of policies and outlook in terms of his political ideology. But can he convince voters that he is the standard bearer for being an asshole? I think that's going to pretty much determine whether he can take the presidency or not.
And that's the question I was actually just going to ask, because I was going to say, do you think he'd be president? But before I even say something like that, he's got to get past the primaries and everything first. So do you think that he actually could beat Trump?
I do not think that. I mean, of course, anything's possible in politics, and I didn't think Trump could be president. So
me neither.
I really would do a disservice by claiming to know who's electable and who's not electable, especially in the Republican Party, if not in this country. But he does have a chance, but I am skeptical that he'll be able to overcome the force of personality that Trump has. Now, he does have one advantage in that he hasn't run for president before and he hasn't been president before. So he's a fresh face. And sometimes political parties and voters look for fresh faces and someone who hasn't tried and failed before to move the party forward. But I'm not sure forward is the direction the party wants to go.
They seem pretty
They seem pretty content with Trump. They seem pretty content with, complaining about the election being stolen, which it wasn't. They seem pretty content about complaining about Hillary's emails and You know,
Hunter Biden's laptop.
Hunter Biden's laptop. Yeah, I mean they have their greatest hits. They don't really want to move the country forward. What they want to do is just complain about Democrats. And when they actually get power, they don't do shit.
That's true.
I mean, they might strip people of rights, but that's about it. They
Right?
strip people of rights and give tax cuts, and that's it. If that's your idea of
And
making America great, then yeah, we're in for some trouble.
Yeah, you
don't
got
forget
that
they make
right.
it. Don't forget that they make it harder for people that live in certain areas to vote.
Oh yeah,
Oh, you
like-
can't forget about that. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, solidifying their electability is pretty much the only thing they care about. And whether they have to restrict other people's rights to achieve that, you know, they don't really care.
I mean, to tell you the truth, I don't like either one of them. But if I had to choose, I would probably, I'm not saying this proudly, but I would probably rather DeSantis than Trump. That's for sure.
I would say yes, but I mean, I'm not okay with either of them.
I mean, I agree.
The only reason why I feel that Trump is more dangerous at this point, he lost and he sees the consequences of losing now. He is not untouchable by law. He was arrested and, you know, charged in New York. And there's more lawsuits coming and more possible prosecution even. I read something earlier that suggested that he was in contact with the Department of Justice over some sort of impending arraignment or announcement of charges. And so he is in a position right now where he really has to win the presidency in order to possibly stay free for the rest of his life. He could definitely go to jail for the rest of his life if he loses the election. If he wins the election and gets in the White House, he pardons himself and the Supreme Court probably looks the other way. Now, do I think that the president has the power to pardon himself? No, I don't think so. But it's never been tested before because no president has ever been so bold as to pardon themselves.
Right.
But of course Trump would do it. I'm surprised that he didn't do it last time. That would have been probably his best move. But we'll see. I'm surprised.
Well, see, my thing when it comes to Trump in general, you would think out of just decency, people would be swaying away because with someone with so many lawsuits, and it just seems like they're stacking up like pancakes. Like, how is that going to make this country any better? When you got basically a criminal that you just said, which we all know was arrested, like this doesn't add up. You would think he would be up in smoke if this was like 20 years ago. You know what I mean? But no, somehow people just look past it, I guess, or they just believe bullshit and just think, oh, this is not true when there's facts that prove that it is. You know what I mean? So like you would think DeSantis would actually have probably more of an upper hand on this because he doesn't really have, besides his, problems with Disney for whatever reason, which is ridiculous, but he doesn't really have that kind of situation surrounding him. You know what I mean? So he seems cleaner, even though he's not, but you know what I mean?
Right. Well, the problem with DeSantis is smarter and he is, he showed that he is willing to take substantial action in terms of advancing conservative ideological agendas, like his war with Disney right now.
Right.
Like, he's the governor of fucking Florida. What governor of Florida gets into a fight with, the biggest company in their state? And it's not even over, any of the business practices or anything. It's because Disney, criticized him for banning books and being anti-civil rights.
I don't blame him for that, to be honest.
I mean, like, he was criticized by the company. That's the reason he's at war with Disney. It's not because of something the company did or, it's not because of a business reason. It's because he was criticized.
Right. And that's where the Trump effect
that is dangerous. Right. And he is actually smart enough to probably exact punishment using the presidential power, unlike Trump, who, he was probably too dumb to figure out how to do that many times while he was in office. He didn't know how to be president. He didn't know the powers of the presidency. And so, yeah, he overstepped his bounds in terms of power, but he also probably was a little bit hesitant to do some things, or didn't know how to go about them, as he just has no clue what the rules are. Whereas DeSantis, he is a lawyer. He can easily know, if he doesn't already know, what the rules are. And therefore, he knows how to bend and manipulate the rules to his favor.
Right. That's the dangerous part.
That's going to be dangerous. But I still think he's slightly better than a narcissist who would be seeking revenge and trying to stay out of prison.
Right. And not only that, though, but we already had 4 years of Trump and it did nothing. He just enriched himself, if anything. And if anything, he took away a right, because he was actually proud of that Roe v. Wade, transition there, and how he flipped it. And that's not something to be proud of. You know what I mean? You just took rights away from women. That's not, that's sick is what that really is. You know what I mean? And usually, I think we've said this before too, but situations arise, like civil rights and stuff, and we end up fighting, and then we eventually get awarded with whatever the right is. This is the counter of that right now. We did that. Roe v. Wade was what it was, and now it's not there. And now in certain states you can, certain states you can't. That's just the way it is. So what's next? Are we going to do voting next? You know what I mean? I find this troubling, and I feel like a lot of people aren't seeing the bigger picture when it comes to that, because this doesn't normally happen this way.
It's not just, when it comes to the voting thing, they're already doing that. They're just not doing it through legislation and everything. They're just doing it through their own fucking areas. So people like Mitch McConnell and Ted Cruz and even Ron DeSantis, they're rigging the areas so that they get more of the votes, and they're making it so in certain areas you can't go to a college and vote, so the young vote doesn't count for anything. And then they're going to start, in poor areas, because they don't want those people voting, and that's what it's going to be. And it's going to ensure that they get another term, because they're going to have, the whole thing rigged up. And that's what's going to keep them in office. And that's why I think that term limits for people in the Senate and Congress and everything should really be something we should explore. Because we need fresh ideas and fresh faces. Because otherwise you get these people who get too comfortable with power and sit in there, do nothing, and claim, oh, I'm all for this. And then they turn around and do the exact opposite. As I say, look at people like Jon Stewart, talking about how, these people claim to be the party of justice and the party of freedom and everything, and they're taking freedoms away. They supposedly love the soldiers and what they do for anything, and then they turn around and they fucking jip them out on that bill because they wanted to put something else in there. You know what I'm saying? That everything they say is just a cover for things that they want to hold over Americans. Oh yeah, we're about this, and we're the good guys. We do the right thing. And I'm not saying that all Republicans are like this. If you go back to when they really put this country together, Republicans and Democrats represented two different things, two sides of what would be the same coin, essentially, that is America. But now they've taken it to such extremes that they're not even concerned about the people or the politics. They're just out for blood, it seems like. And that's what scares me the most.
That's true. And then you also figure when it comes to any politician, it's like they show you what's in this hand. Oh, this is great. Look at this. But it's the other hand that you really need to pay attention more to. 'Cause that's the one that's doing stuff under the table. You know what I mean? And that's how we got to where we are in certain cases, in a sense. But you asked me. I mean, the bottom line is, from what I'm seeing, especially from the candidates so far, I don't care if it's Biden's head in a jar. I'm probably going to vote for it. I'm not like Futurama status. You know what I mean? Because I don't see them. I still don't see him. I'm not saying he's the greatest politician or the greatest president ever, but from what I'm seeing so far, I don't think any of these candidates are better than him. To be honest. You know what I mean? Because he got the infrastructure bill actually passed. Now, granted, it was supposed to have a lot more, like I believe loan forgiveness was supposed to be in it, but the Republicans didn't want that in there, so they took that out. And there was other things that, you know what I mean, they had to nitpick and take it out. Bottom line is, at least it still got passed. But, you know, if it wasn't for them, probably could have been even better, and it would have affected people throughout the whole country, which, you know, it still does, but that would have been even more beneficial to some that can't get a mortgage because of their college loans now, say, you know what I mean? So that's just the way I see it as far as that goes. I mean, how do you guys feel about that? Do you think that any of these guys actually can face up against Biden?
It's hard to say. You know, Trump says he doesn't want to go do any of the debates, so he may be a non-contestant, but we'll see what happens with DeSantis and anyone, you know, willing to run up against him. I mean, would you vote for like Liz Cheney or who's that other Republican that's tried once? He was the only one to try to indict Trump
Mitt
second
Romney?
time. Yes.
Yeah,
I mean, would you vote for them if they tried to be president? Or
I mean, against Biden, no, but I would have no problem with either of them being president. I might not agree with them, but I would sleep well at night knowing that this country wasn't being dicked over by Putin.
Right?
I would not be able to say the same about Trump.
No, I agree. I definitely agree. And it's like you already have his term to show that too, because like we've seen it. It's not new. It's not like we're talking theoretically here. Like this, we've already seen that. You know what I mean? So I feel like that page is turned. Let's not flip back. We're supposed to, time only moves in one direction. So let's just keep going that way. You know what I mean? Because that's where we're supposed to be going.
I just find it very difficult to believe that a Liz Cheney or a Mitt Romney could win the Republican primary.
I agree. I don't see that happening.
yeah, that's the problem with that, because it's like, who are they really clamoring to? And when they do these debates, I mean, are you going to see like Chris Christie go back up again?
Well, apparently Nikki Haley's on the list too, but I don't see that happening. I'm going to be honest with you there. I don't see that happening either.
I have a feeling, though, that if Trump tries to debate, he's going to get slammed by his own freaking caucus.
Well, that's the thing too. Yeah, when you look at all the candidates too, like none of them, like, I don't know. I don't see any of them really appealing whatsoever, to be honest. So like I figured at this point they would actually have something maybe a little more solidified or maybe something a little more structured. And I guess technically DeSantis kind of fits that a little bit, but he's, you know, he's a danger is probably the word I'm looking for. And I don't really look at that as a description of what I was saying before. You know what I mean? Like it's not a structured Republican. It's not like I have trust issues with a lot of them because I feel like every time a Republican takes office, we go backwards. And then when a Democrat gets in, they can't necessarily even do all of in which they want because they have to fix a lot of shit that happened from the predecessor. And then if they do get, you know, 2 terms, then you might see more. But there's always the reconstruction first. You know what I mean? And like we can't move forward with
by the second term, though, well before the second term, even by the midterms of the first term, the country is already like, oh, well, you had enough time. We're putting the Republicans in Congress, in one of the houses of Congress, so you can't get anything done anymore.
Right. And it was like spiteful things. Yeah. Like it's just, we can't move forward as a nation if we're going to keep butting heads like that.
Deal with hitting the debt ceiling and not paying our debts.
Right.
You know, like it seems every time they take over a House of Congress, when there's a Democratic president, we threaten to not pay our fucking country's debts. Like every fucking time now. It's so predictable.
And then it's funny because when you have the Democrat as the president, and the Republicans are always so stingy with the money and, oh, we're spending too much. But then when they get president, they have an infinite, swipe card, and they can just do whatever the hell they want as they please.
Let's give away tax cuts to the rich, and then where did our budget deficit closing go?
Right.
When Obama left office, we were on track to maybe one day have a surplus because we kept closing the deficit that had ballooned under George W. Bush.
Right.
And, we had the financial crisis that we had to pay our way out of. It costs money to stabilize the economy after a catastrophic crash like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so after spending that money, and we were reducing the deficit from over $1 trillion, it was well over $1 trillion, to getting below $500 billion. And it was trending towards perhaps getting to a surplus. But what did Republicans do? What did Trump do when he got in office? Tax cuts, which meant that the money was not going towards deficit reduction anymore.
Right.
It was just
going to pockets.
And we were still spending money. So, yeah.
Well, if you think about it, he was running it like he runs his failed businesses. I mean, yeah, he's a family inherited rich kid, but he's got more failed businesses than most people will ever even be able to have in their entire lifetime. We're talking steaks and airlines and vodkas and, you know what I mean? So, if he's so irresponsible with his own businesses, we shouldn't be surprised that he can't fucking run the country. You know what I mean? He's going to do it the same way. It's just it shouldn't be a shocker, really. But people got swayed by bullshit, and that's what happened there. One thing I also will bring up, I think that we all can probably agree upon, is that I think that trickle-down economics is just total bullshit, and I think we need to get rid of it because it never trickles down. Just the cup gets bigger. You know what I mean? Sure, you paint the picture the way it originally was, and maybe it made some kind of sense, but that's not how it actually gets carried out. You know what I mean? That cup, they say when it fills, it's supposed to trickle down to every, the workers and everybody else. No, that's not how it works. That one cup just suddenly gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and there is no trickle.
No, well, the whole idea basically is that if you let job creators, quote unquote, that's the Republicans' word for rich fucks. If you let the job creators keep more of their money, then they'll create more jobs so that there are more jobs for other people and better jobs for the rest of the people. That is absolutely been proven false over and over and over again. How many times have we done these tax cuts and there were the jobs? You give tax cuts, like W. Bush gave tax cuts. Where were the jobs? We were losing jobs.
Yeah.
Whereas Obama raised taxes on the rich and still created jobs. So this notion that letting rich people keep more of the money will create jobs and trickle down into the rest of the economy is a false one.
Entirely.
There are more economic factors at play when it comes to job creation and wealth distribution. It's not simply a matter of whether rich people have money or not. It's how they deploy that money and whether or not the society is structured in such a way that economic activity can benefit all people or raise or have more of a benefit for people toward the bottom and the middle and not just at the top.
Right. I always thought the legendary George Carlin said it the best. The way this country kind of works is the rich don't pay any taxes. The middle class pays for just about all the taxes. And then the poor is just there to scare the shit out of the middle class. But
the rich do pay taxes. They do pay a lot of taxes, but do they pay enough? No.
Of course not.
And they don't pay enough in very particular ways. they avoid paying taxes on capital gains. So if you go out and work for your money, you pay, at a certain rate, depending on your level of income. But if you just sit on your ass and let your money work for you in terms of investments, you're not laboring for your money at all. It's money you've already made that you're investing. You get taxed at much less of a rate than money that you have to go out and work for. I think that's unfair. I think that's evil to tax that at a different rate, at a much lower rate, in order to quote unquote incentivize investment. No, it's not. It's basically to allow people who have generational wealth and to solidify that wealth and to grow that wealth. That's what it's about. It's not, they're making sure that they don't lose money, that they don't lose their wealth.
And that only helps one kind of people.
Yeah, I mean, if you go out and have to perform labor in exchange for money, you're at a severe disadvantage compared with someone who already has money to just put into an investment, a risky investment. And, if they lose money in that investment, just write it off. But they also have, different ways of, hiding money, and it's just, if they have offshore investments, and there's just a whole different world of making money and moving money that the wealthy avail themselves of, that people who go out and labor for money, they just don't have the opportunity to do that. And to tax those people more than people who do not work for their money, like I said, it's evil.
Yeah, it's definitely an unfair system. Definitely is. There's no question there. Question is, will something ever be done?
Probably not, because people are too distracted by
the bullshit,
social issues and
right?
Things of that nature. Battles that have already been resolved. Republicans, are too focused on abortion rights and rolling back civil rights instead of, why are wealthy people getting to keep so much of their money that society's been unfairly structured to give them that money and to protect that money.
Right.
It's definitely something that voters should pay more attention to, or perhaps even the most attention to. But that never happens because we're always distracted by either the latest crisis, or we're distracted by bullshit social issues that have already been resolved as a society, but yet they keep resurfacing largely because of the economic inequality that has been pushed by the Republican ideology in terms of economics.
That's our show for this week, everyone. Strange Planet will have new episodes on YouTube every Friday. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week.